Welcome, I'm Moeller, Managing Partner of Beratergruppe Neuwaldegg. In our consulting work in the last years, one topic became more and more important. It's the topic of purpose. Why are we doing the things we're doing here, and what is the ultimate goal we want to achieve? Seems to be a question that drives around management teams in a lot of different organizations in our today's world. And it was a question in our organization as well. What do we want to contribute and what impact do we want to make with our work? That inspired Franziska Fink, a dear colleague of mine, and myself to dig a little bit deeper into the topic of purpose.
So we ended up with our book, Purpose-Driven Organizations, which was in 2019 nominated for the Get Abstract International Book Award, being considered as one of the 10 best business books in German language of the last 12 months. In the book, we've documented different case studies of organizations implementing some or many of the practices of purpose-driven organizations. One of them is Bosch Power Tools, a division of the Bosch Group, which produces with around about 20,000 employees and a turnover of 4.6 billion euros electric tools for craftsmen, DIY, and gardening. They found themselves in an environment of complete upheaval. Demographic change in values, digitalization, and also a change in the sales channels where online became more and more important, and Amazon grew to one of their most important customers in Germany, where their former separation of the blue, professional, and green product lines for the home users was not feasible or implementable anymore in the way that they used to be with different sales channels, because everything was just one click away. So they urged the need actually for a more user-oriented and more adaptable organization. They were striving to implement design thinking and more agile development practices throughout their whole organization, and started within one of the business units, which is the home and gardening unit, by bringing together all of the employees of that unit to design and create new ideas for the future of the organization. They were guided by the principles of purpose, mastery, and autonomy, which they wanted to implement more in their leadership practices and in their daily work, and created a new structure which actually moved away from functional silos like product development, product marketing, controlling, towards purpose teams. Purpose teams are organized around a specific purpose, like drilling, for example, and the people there work together in cross-functional teams and organize themselves within the teams without having the need of a hierarchical management as it used to be before. Another organization is DM, one of the largest retail chains in Europe, which actually was founded and with a strong emphasis on creating a social organism in which human beings are able to unfold their potential and can contribute to society. Following that purpose, when you're working with this organization, you will sense that the know why really always becomes before the know how. That people understand why they are doing things, what's the purpose, and can follow that purpose actually to unfold their potentials and to contribute to society. The whole structure is built up from outside in. First the customer, then the branch that serves the individual customer, and the rest of the organization serves the branches so that they can best deal and contribute to the customer's well-being. They have a strong distribution of authority with a high level of autonomy within the organization, where branches can decide many things internally and all the people relate to each other on eye level. There's a strong style of servant leadership. Leader serves the rest of the organization, serves the people who serve the customer. One of the features we found there is economic transparency. Everyone has access to all of the financial data and current status of the business within their unit they are working in. And they have an interesting process, which they call the income finding process, where within the teams they discuss once a year the salaries of every person, who needs how much, who deserves how much actually, and that salaries are not fixed by hierarchical decision or by HR, although within the boundaries, of course, of regulations that they have to follow due to tariffs within their industry. And they have a strong practice of learning. They call it Lernen in der Arbeit, learning at work, where they implement a kind of philosophy of learning which starts with a challenge an employee has to explore and to find solutions for, and then can try out an experiment with that challenge before getting support in need, which is the other way around, as usually instructions are given. So you have first the instruction usually, and then people need to practice to best implement that. They do it the other way around. Because of the insight, actually, you learn a lot more when you experience and experiment and try out things yourself than by being given guidelines that you need to implement. Another example, which is not documented in the book yet, is Mercedes-Benz I/O, which is a software development unit actually that drives forward all the initiatives of Mercedes-Benz going digital. Software solutions that end up in the cars make it easier for users and for drivers to navigate through the traffic and to make use of the car. They are focusing on agile software development as their means how to come up with these solutions, and following a purpose we found quite beautifully. It's to create experiences that people love and we're proud of. That's the purpose of this independent company within the Mercedes-Benz group, and it's totally purpose-driven. The company, the circles, which are the units within the organization, and the roles itself, all of them have a specific purpose, which is their major guideline, their ultimate goal they are working towards, and gives them orientation in daily life and for decisions in business. They have implemented Holacracy as a means of self-organization, which is a comprehensive framework for guiding the process of organizing, and their work style is completely distributed. They offer home office work, as well as free offices, which are in Stuttgart, Berlin, and Lisbon, and people are free to choose where they work from. The only thing they need to have a focus on is how to bring the purpose of their role, the purpose of their project into life. A fourth example is a company we're working currently with. It's a regional newspaper company, a media house, which is developing new business models actually to catch up with the digital wave actually, and the disruption that social media and the internet brings to the media business and to the newspaper business. And for being able to better orient themselves in developing their future and in innovating new business models, they were working with us on their purpose, developing a purpose that is translates a little bit like this: we inform, explain, and tell stories for the people in our region and empower them to take decisions in a self-determined way. Given that purpose now, that opens up a lot more perspective and ideas and creative opportunities for generating new business models and new business ideas than just the focus on newspaper. And we're currently working with them in connecting all the people with that purpose and driving forward the initiative for creating the future around this purpose. So what do we mean with purpose? Purpose has a double meaning from our perspective. The one is more focusing on an emotional dimension of generating energy and driving motivation. It's considered to be one of the most important drivers for intrinsic motivation, alongside with autonomy and mastery. And Viktor Frankl put it in the words actually that purpose is simply one of the most important human needs. And as it is a significant contribution to the well-being and a successful life, it becomes more and more important for many people. And also this is shown by the psychological research of the branch of the positive psychology in the last 20 years, which created a lot of empirical and scientific evidence that meaning or purpose is one of the 5 major ingredients for well-being, along with positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, and achievements. The flip side, the other side of that coin of the 2 meanings of purpose, is that purpose is the answer to the question why. That's more the content dimension, because it gives orientation in the sense maybe of a compass for complex situations, where the why clarifies the ultimate goal, where a decision needs to head for, and where actions need to be driving to. The state of the art of organizational sciences and organizational development considers organizations to be continuous process of communication and of decisions. And in that heart of organizations, those individual decisions and communications could be maybe compared or visualized with that kind of picture of metal cuttings. Every decision or communication within an organization is one of these metal cuts. And the question is, how can you bring order into that? One approach could be picking up every single one of them and put them to order, but I guess that would be difficult even for the most genius leader actually to do. Another way is to use a magnet. Purpose is such a magnet for the communications and decisions in an organization. It brings order and creates beautiful patterns of orientation and drive towards a certain aim. And this is shown also in empirical studies about the impact of purpose drive within organizations. One of the studies we found from the Korn Ferry Institute researched a couple of companies, around about 30, from different industries that are considered to be purpose-driven, and compared them with their peers. What they found out within the study is that those companies grow 4 times as fast as their peers, although maybe the purpose is not growth. It results in growth, and they improved in many areas, from the collaboration, where purpose leads to more and better collaboration within the organization. It supports breakthrough innovation and effective decision making, as well as it helps to attract, for example, customers, talent, and also to deal with suppliers. One study we found very interesting was from Harvard Business School, Columbia, and the New York University, which researched 429 US companies and interviewed more than 450,000 employees at all levels of these organizations. They compared traditional organizations with those that were considered purpose-driven, and within that, they found something very interesting. The differentiation between the emotional and the content side we had while defining purpose. Because what they found out is that all of the organizations that use purpose or follow a certain purpose, they use it at least as a cultural factor, as a driver of motivation. In that study, they called them the high purpose camaraderie organizations. But within that subset of companies, they found another subset, which were those who didn't only use it for cultural issues and were working on purpose to have a better driver of motivation, but who used it as well for steering, for decision making, and for the clarification of expectations, which they called high purpose clarity organizations. And what they found out is that those organizations with high purpose clarity, they outperform all the others that are using purpose only as a cultural factor. In that case, purpose really drives decision making and clarity and motivation that leads to a higher performance and to economic success. But what they found out as well is what this requires is a high level of buy-in into the purpose from top and middle managers, as well as a very consistent orientation towards that purpose and to derive expectations from that in everyday life to really make it the major factor of steering. So what does purpose mean and how can you formulate it? Purpose is at the heart of the golden circle that Simon Sinek created, which separates the level of what an organization does from how it does it and brings us to the why it does it. A good description or way to formulate a purpose is that it combines the contribution and the impact an organization wants to make. The contribution this organization or that person wants to make to the world or to the society it lives in, and the impact that it expects or wants to create with this contribution. For example, for us at Neuwaldegg, our contribution we want to make is to make organization new, to create the impact that the world can meet human needs and hopes today and in the future as well. What we found out in our research and in our work with our customers is that purpose-driven organizations follow and implement 5 specific disciplines that help them to trigger evolutionary change. The first one is that purpose is made the dominant decision-making premise and thus the central guideline. In all of their decision-making and daily practices, they always bring the focus into the focus of the purpose into the focus of attention. They break it down, for example, by defining specific purposes of teams and of roles and projects that directly relate and contribute to the overall purpose of the organization. Usually they start with discovering the purpose and formulating in the way actually we already been talking about as contribution and an impact they want to make. And there are different approaches to do that, like purpose quests, the why process, or the Ikigai scheme. Some of the organizations have developed methods and practices to bring the purpose all over the daily work life into the focus of attention again. For example, by using the question, how did that serve the purpose at the end of a meeting, as a kind of a reflection? How did this meeting, for example, or how did this decision support or serve the purpose? Which brings again the purpose into the minds, and it clarifies the relation of things that people are doing within the organization towards the purpose. What most of the organizations found useful when considering the point of decision making within the organization is to move away from the decision mode of striving for consensus towards a more progress supporting and more fluent way of making decisions by orienting themselves in decision making towards consent. Consent means not everyone needs to approve, but there need to be eliminated all barriers actually, or issues that could harm the organization by implementing a certain decision. So the basic criteria while making a decision within a team is this decision safe enough to try? Can we take this decision and implement it and learn then over time and even adapt in the future? Or does it create harm or moves us backwards? If this is not the case, there is no reason not to take the decision and continue working on that. A second discipline purpose-driven organizations are implementing is considering the way how they come up with their structures, their roles, how they differentiate power, and how they differentiate work within the organization. Purpose-driven organizations make use of self-organization. Teams or circles are the basic nucleus of the organization, and decision-making power is delegated and distributed towards those different teams and towards the roles actually that need to take decisions. So the power to decide is delegated to the point where the need to make decisions arises. Purpose-driven organizations also provide autonomy in how teams and different roles organize themselves. So they implement self-organization, but not without putting kind of strict rules or a kind of code of rules how to do this process of organizing. The reason for that is that they want to avoid chaos and other issues that usually are accompanying processes of reorganizing, and that they have a clearer and joint understanding of how they come up with decisions about roles and how they come up with clear expectations towards these roles. So the process of organizing itself is codified, but the outcome of what the structures then look like, what the roles are, and what are the expectations towards these roles, this is left open and delegated as a decision-making power towards the teams. By having clear rules for the process of organizing, they are able to reorganize and to adapt to the current needs of the organization more frequently. What we found, for example, in the operating system called Holacracy is a mode where teams come together on a monthly basis for a kind of a governance meeting to take decisions about expectations and roles and how they work together and make decisions about the organization on a very frequent basis. This fosters and drives organizational progress and fit towards the current needs. But it emphasizes as well a strong focus of attention on the content, on the work that needs to be done. Therefore, purpose-driven organizations balance that stronger emphasis on the work that needs to be done by a different layer of, for example, meetings and spaces they open up for the informal communication. So that not only the relationships are in the focus of attention, but the relationships between the people as well. One example we found are meetings once a week or once a month within a team, which are called community spaces, where people come together and clarify issues and conflicts they have with each other. They give each other feedback, and most of the people make use of that after a certain period of adaptation towards that to strengthen their relationships with their colleagues. Purpose-driven organizations so put a very strong emphasis on organizing itself, on self-organization, and the clarity of how this will be done and implemented within the organization. As they strive for giving people autonomy on the decisions they need to make, it becomes clear that people are more influential in these kind of organizations than in other ones where they are more strictly regulated in the ways how they make decisions, what they work on, and how they do that. Giving this autonomy, as people become more influential, the decisions about people, on who gets hired, which person is staffed on which role and energizes which role, becomes more important. Purpose-driven organizations put therefore a strong emphasis in their people decisions on the cultural and purpose fit of the people. The idea behind that is that people who support from their own perspective, from their own characteristics and their own purposes, the purpose of the organization, will become more productive and effective within the organization, and will express the purpose of the organization better in the daily decisions and in the daily work. What they do as well is that they make people decisions or decisions about people a more participatory process. In many organizations, we found that teams decide together about staffing and about hiring of certain people. So when these kind of people decisions need to be taken, most of the team members can contribute to that. In some organizations, we found as well that the compensation schemes get adapted. One of the major drivers for that is that the move from the organizational idea, one person, one job, or one function within the role, towards one person, several more specified, more clearly differentiated roles, puts some compensation schemes under pressure. The other reason behind that is that the drive for purpose also needs to be reflected on the compensation level, which means actually that not the individual achievements or the individual work that a certain person gets specifically in the focus and gets measured, but more what is the impact of that, what the person makes, the contribution it makes with its work towards the purpose and towards the whole. So for some organizations, they put at least a part of their compensation on a joint process of evaluating who contributed what towards the organization and then compensate that. And as people become more important and more influential in these kind of organizations than they ever used to be, there is also a very strong emphasis in these organizations to develop these people, to support them, but as well, there's also a very high level of challenge for these people. Purpose-driven organizations are demanding, and they are supporting as well. towards the people who work with them. One aspect and one discipline that many researchers put into the focus of organizations that strive for more agility and more purpose drive is culture. Purpose-driven organizations, we found actually, in terms of culture, they value most trust and flexibility. And they promote that within their culture. But the issue actually is that culture is nothing that you can decide as easily as strategies, organizational structures, or as people who get hired. It's something that develops over time. But what many organizations that are considered to be purpose-driven do, they put a focus on culture in terms of reflecting the culture, observing the culture, and putting it onto the agenda of meetings in terms of what values do we really live in here, the decision we've currently made, what values does it express, do we really follow what we are promoting and what we are striving for, which is trust, flexibility, and values actually that foster agility? Or are there still some detriments and some obstacles in our culture that we need to put more attention on? One example how organizations put that into practice we found actually is a specific role that they implement, one organization implemented in their meetings. This organization has a strong emphasis on the culture of mindfulness. And what they actually implemented to support that strive for mindfulness is the role of the Achtgeber. That translates maybe a little bit into English with caretaker. It's a role actually that is energized by one of the members of a team during the meeting, and it has the authority to ring a bell when it observes that the current discussion within the meeting violates the value of mindfulness. And when the bell rings, all of us stop talking and there's silence for 1 minute. To remind people of the value of mindfulness that they want to emphasize and to bring them back into the mood of relating to each other in a mindful way. And there's a fifth discipline that is going towards the outwards world. Purpose-driven organizations are not only strong in the way how they deal internally with their daily practices, they also put a strong focus on the ecosystem, on the stakeholders and the other organizations around them that they are working with. For example, we found organizations in a certain sector that work together from time to time under a shared purpose, for example, of developing a new product or technology. They come together under and align under a shared purpose, and they form an ecosystem that co-evolves. All of the activities of the different inhabitants of this ecosystem support and also trigger evolution and learning within all of the organizations. So purpose-driven organizations put a strong emphasis on other organizations, how they relate with them, how they can cooperate, and strive always to find new opportunities for creating something together. So I hope this short overview of purpose-driven organizations and the 5 disciplines we found was helpful for you and inspiring, and I would be happy to get into a more intensive discussion at another point in time. Have a good time and join in on making organization new. Thanks for listening.